Hi. How are you, Sophie?
I'm good.
Good. Is it all right for you to speak in English?
Yes, totally.
Okay, good.
Totally.
Tell me, where are you at the moment in Germany?
Yeah, I am in Germany. I'm in Cologne right now.
Okay, yeah. And of course, I'm very interested to know about your recovery and your injury, and especially in this time where it was lockdown. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, actually with the lockdown and Corona,
Yeah.
I would even dare to say that it was helpful in a way.
Okay. Yeah.
Because less things were happening, no concerts, no projects, nothing. And so I think it was a very good timing in a way that the injury happened during this time
Mm,
because it gave me a lot of time to focus on myself, my injury and my rehab.
mm.
So I honestly didn't take it that negatively.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah.
But how did this happen? Because it's your hand and you play the violin.
Yeah, I played a violin and it's my left hand. Um, which with a violin, I don't think one can say one of the hands is more important than the other.
Yeah.
Um, but the accident happened in August last year. It was end of August on 19th of August in the evening, very late. I was climbing with my boyfriend and we were heading back home and it was very late. And we took e-scooters.
Mm.
Um, and unfortunately, I didn't see the cyclist coming. Somehow the light in the darkness with the light from the pole on the street
Mm.
made me not see the person and we crashed frontally. He was on a bicycle and I was on an e-scooter and it was in both directions. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And luckily, well, I say luckily, but was your arm or your hand and not more. Yeah.
Yeah, I was very lucky that I didn't get a concussion even. I
Mm.
remember crashing because I didn't see him coming and I only noticed it when the face was already in my face. So I didn't really have even 1 second to prepare mentally for the accident. And I remember just crashing. It felt like a car crash. And then as soon as I landed on the ground, I never blacked out. I
Mm.
hit my head on the side. I know that because I had a huge bump and
Oh
my head
yeah.
really hurt. But
Yeah.
I never lost consciousness. So, and I started screaming right away. So
Mm.
definitely very
Did you?
lucky. And
Mm.
I also got checked up in the hospital, and no concussion, maybe only like very slightly, but yeah.
Did you actually break your hand or your
Yes,
arm? No.
I did. So if I have the two bones here from
Yeah.
Ellenspeiche, this one here, which always sticks out,
Mm.
a piece on the top broke off and turned around. This
Mm.
bone, though, did not get touched by the surgeons because in the past years, they've come to a conclusion that if it stays in the radius of the bone, then it's
Mm.
better to not touch the bone. So
Oh, I
even
see.
now, after the second surgery, they didn't touch it because I also didn't have any problems with it. Maybe
Oh,
sometimes
okay.
pain, but not huge pain.
Mm.
And then this one here splintered completely. It
Mm.
broke into a lot of pieces. It was a big mess, that bone. And it was actually that bone that needed surgery for a plate that came in from down here.
Oh,
And then
yeah.
a screw that was put in basically like this.
Mm.
Um, and the only complication that there was that the screw that had to be put in like that
Yeah.
couldn't be put in completely because in between Elle und Speiche, I don't know what the English term
Yeah.
is for that,
Yeah.
there's a canal with a lot of important nerves.
Mm.
And if they would have screwed it in completely, it would have come into that tunnel, which obviously is not very good. So
No.
I had a little bit of the screw sticking out here underneath my skin. And when I touched it, it was touching a nerve. So it always felt like an electroshock going through my body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it must have been a very intricate operation to fix that. Yeah.
Yeah, it took, I think, 2 hours,
Mm,
if I'm not wrong now. But I was very lucky because I just moved to Cologne. So I
mm,
didn't know at all where I was going to end up at.
mm,
And luckily, I had very good hand surgeons, hand specialists. And a few months after, I went back to Vienna because I was born in Vienna,
mm,
and my insurance is still in Vienna. And I went to Dr. Leixnering, who
mm,
is right now known to be basically the best of hand specialists. And he had a very close look at it. He's very, very detailed and very strict in a way. Like, he checked it up very well, and he was just saying at the end that it was really a good job. Um,
okay.
I was very
Mm.
lucky with that too.
Yeah, yeah, yes, of course, because you need your hand for the violin, for the playing. Was there any time that you thought, what if this doesn't work out and I would not be able to play again? Or did you always just thought that you will be playing again?
um, that's an interesting question because I remember the day of my accident, I was I was supposed to have a violin lesson, I think 1 or 2 days after. And around those months, actually for quite a long time, I had a little bit of a struggle with the violin, finding the connection and staying motivated and all of these things. So in a way, I was very stressed for that violin lesson,
Mm,
even though there was no pressure from my teacher, but I had pressure myself for that violin lesson. And I
mm,
remember the first thing when I had a calm second after the accident, waiting for the ambulance, I was just saying to my boyfriend, like, I don't have a violin lesson now, which sounds really
yeah, yeah, never. Mm,
extreme, but it
yeah.
gave me a break. And after all the chaos of getting to the hospital, having the MRIs,
Mm,
the
mm,
scan and everything, once I got to my bed in my room, I was lying in bed, and obviously I was still very much in shock and under
mm,
medication and everything, and I had a hard time falling asleep. And I was just lying there, and I remember, instead of being scared,
mm,
sad, I don't know, anything of these things, instead of that, I was very thankful. I
mm,
was, I felt a huge feeling of, I don't know, it was very special because
mm,
I was not upset that this accident happened, not at all.
mm.
I accepted it right away without even having had time to think about it. That was my immediate reaction. And I was just very thankful that I came out the way I did through
Yeah.
that accident.
Mm,
And I didn't even have one moment where I was stressing out about the violin because
mm,
I knew I was all right. Like,
mm.
I was lying there, I had my body, I had my head, everything, and I was all right.
That
And
is amazing. Yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
and
that just brings everything back to perspective, and in the right perspective to think, this is why I was said before that it could have been so much worse. And in all, it sounds terrible to say that, but it was just your hand, or,
yeah,
it was, and you were still here. Um, but it's wonderful that you had that process of, that feeling and that peacefulness, that I'm still alive, I'm still here. Mm.
yeah, yeah, definitely. My mom also always says, like, all of my siblings and I, whenever something happens, we always have a very big archangel behind us saving us. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Yeah. So, and then, of course, this whole uh, time that you went through. So we're all, I'm talking to everybody about lockdown, and we're talking about all the things, you know, people go through, and I think also in injuries. My daughter had a knee injury that I think I told you about.
Yes.
But also it took a year for her before she could start dancing again. And in that process, so much happened in her mind and in herself about the art and the ballet and what she's doing. And it would be interesting, did you also go through these things where you think a lot about it and about your artistry and your art?
Um, So it took me a time to get the prescription for physio. So in that amount of time, I was anyways in a lot of pain, and I really couldn't, for a really long time, I couldn't do anything with my arm.
Mm.
I was also in a cast afterwards for a while. So in that time, anyways, nothing happened, and I was very busy with my pain and kind of working on that trauma that I went through. So I would say in that period of time, I didn't even really have the space in my head to think about anything else in that moment. Um, I did have uh, music in my home because my boyfriend is also a violinist and friends of ours are musicians. So it was not like I had a full break of music. I was
Mm.
sitting and listening, but that was okay for me.
Yeah.
Um, once
But
I
it
start,
wasn't a like a urge to start playing again. It was
not
just very calm.
not in that moment. Funnily, it only came now after the second surgery. But
Mm.
um, in those months and weeks, I was really just focusing on my hands
Mm.
getting healthy again. I was talking with a lot of friends about it because usually when a musician gets injured, the first reaction of teachers, sometimes family, yourself, is panic and,
Yeah, yeah,
oh my god, we can't play the
yeah,
instrument anymore and all of that. But for
yeah.
me, that in that time, it was really just getting my hand back
Mm.
because I really couldn't do a lot of things,
Mm.
and I really wanted to get back to using my hand as normal as my right hand.
Yeah.
um, and I started with physio, and from the accident, since it was a shock moment, still a lot of my muscles, especially in my arm, from the pain,
Mm.
from the surgery, from the shock, were very cramped. So that also made the process a bit longer.
Mm.
I still have, but at that time, my teacher was staying in touch with me a lot, which helped me a lot.
Mm.
um,
Who
I
is your teacher?
Sibylle Chop, she's in
Mm.
Switzerland right now.
Mm.
Um, she was, even if she knew she can't teach me right now, she was checking up on me, seeing how I'm
Mm.
doing. And then once I had the cast down, she started with a very gentle, very careful rehab with me on the violin already, even
Mm.
though I was still very far from any process of getting
Mm.
better in my hand. Like, I was working really hard with my physio,
Mm.
and I did not have a lot of movement at all yet. I was still very small, swollen, and all of these things. But she started with simple things like touching the string, getting that fine feeling back, and also keeping in touch with the violin in a way. And then from there on, she started to progress it very slowly.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's wonderful, and that's wonderful that you had her support, and that she knew exactly what to do to not, you know, to re in or to reconnect you then with the instrument. I always want people to name their teachers, because I think teachers play such an amazing role in artists' lives and artist development. And this is wonderful how she did that. But I also find it fascinating that you noted, that you recorded it on Instagram, because I think that's very important, that it's very inspiring, even for me as a non-musician. When I saw that, I thought, wow, this is really inspiring, that that it's possible to see, because you never think about that,
Social media is a very special topic of mine. I wouldn't call myself a social media person. I do not try to get a lot of likes or anything. And my friends even laugh at me for how long I take to upload something, because I
Yeah.
feel very insecure about it. It's very
Mm.
open, and yeah, it's a bit scary for me.
Mm.
But in that moment, I I think I was just following my gut feeling.
Mm.
In the past years, I kind of also had a promise to myself to not post anything about violin or music, because I was very insecure. I still am a lot. And somehow that took my pressure from bringing myself out in this world
Mm.
with violin. But after that accident, I did film little steps of mine at home to also see how I improve, and just, I don't know, I just wanted to
Mm.
film it. And in some moment, I just had that gut feeling of, why not share it? On my social media, I mainly have only close people. So it's not like I have a huge
Mm.
amount of strangers following me or me following them. So I knew who I was gonna share this with. And even though I didn't know anyone who was in such a time at the moment, I just felt it might be of help, but it also might be of help for them seeing where I'm standing.
Mm.
I did have a lot of people text me and call me um, after the accident, checking up on me. And maybe just sharing that process was a huge sense of mine for getting them on board in a
Yes.
way. Yeah.
Yes. But this is wonderful, and this is really what I think should be. Uh, the social media thing has two sides for me. It has the side where exactly that what you're telling, where people show only, the not the real side, but I'm talking about the real side, and I'm showing the real side also by taking these pictures that I don't edit, and that I don't edit the buildings. um, I show it as it is, and I think this is also important, and this sends out a very more a real message as well about the person. And I think, but with artists is also half the pressure of showing your best side and showing what you're playing the best, what you're playing, but then I'm talking to artists now and saying, shouldn't it be, not necessarily, I'm not talking about selfies when you're doing something, I'm talking about really showing something of the artist's life, and not too much to take the magic away, but like this, for example, like in I never, you think of a ballet dancer being injured because it's so part of their lives. um, you never think of what happens when a musician, loses his hand, or the use of his hand. um, and this is so great that you've done that. And I think also, like you say, it's not as if you have 100,000 followers and people are just these are people that you really telling the story to, you're really sharing to people who care. and who are interested. And that's wonderful that you do that way. Mm.
Yeah, I think the music world or society has still a very big gray cloud of pressure over their heads. And you see that through social media too. I totally agree. And it's even little things like, for example, I shared once a climbing post because I love sports and it's a good balance
Mm.
for me. I grew up with sports, and for me, it was never a danger for me playing the violin, because
Mm.
for a lot of teachers or musicians, they get so scared doing sports because they could injure their hands, which is correct. But for example,
Mm.
me, I got injured on my hand
Yeah,
completely out of the context
yeah.
of sports. Um, but posting that, it also had a little like voice in my head being like, oh no, what do people think then about that?
Mm.
I can totally believe that it's often between friends that you say like you climb or you do any sports, and others are, oh my god, why do you do that?
Mm.
And the same is with it's not the same, but a different topic where a huge cloud of pressure is over their heads is mental health. And that was also a big, big, big factor during that time and
Mm.
also before, but I only started speaking about that with the help of my injury. Mental health is totally not being talked about under musicians now, slowly, but it
Yeah.
still takes a lot to speak openly about it, because everyone has to show their perfect sides, everyone has to play perfect. There's lots of musicians who post practice videos, but those clips are perfectly run throughs.
Yeah.
They're not
Yeah.
practicing
Yeah.
those things. Yeah, I totally
Mm.
agree with social media about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think also it was interesting for me to see, while I was taking these pictures, I'm asked many musicians to play or sing something through the window, and many did it even though they knew it's not, they would say, oh, I'm not warmed up, or oh, what shall I play, or it was like in the minute, and then they would always want to check the video before I post it.
Yeah.
um, and that, well, yeah, there's mistakes, let's make a retake or something. But many just said, oh, post it, it's Facebook, like that, very, very informal. But many were not very insecure to do it, and because of the pressure, I think, also not just the pressure from outside, but the pressure amongst the musicians, that colleagues would see it, or that other students would see it, and it's not perfect, or so. But I do find now that I post these videos that even though it's not perfect, it's actually wonderful. It's wonderful because it's music, and it's how it's done, and done through the window. And I think, yes, when you're in a concert hall, the strive is to have it perfect, of course. But I do think, in a way, it should be. I think, in a way, it causes a barrier for musicians to really just enjoy it and connect with people, and just put it out there, even though it's not perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. I really agree on that.
Mm.
It's it's as if the meaning of music, the historical meaning of music
Yes.
has gotten lost completely. For me, I I don't do very good in this competitive world,
Mm.
and music always had a very very unique voice inside me. And for example, in concerts, I totally agree that you strive to play perfect, but in the end, if I sit in the audience, for me, I don't get fully taken by that person who plays if they play perfectly,
Mm,
without any mistakes, but not emotionally, they don't open their
exactly.
hearts, nothing. I would rather hear a mistake because that reminds me that they're a human, number
Yes,
one.
yes,
And
exactly,
number two,
exactly.
those are usually
Yeah.
the people who really open up and share their
Mm.
music with the audience. Um, so, yeah.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I also saw a lot of students play now over the summer in the streets here in Vienna, and also
Mm.
here in Stadtpark. And that is for me something that I really enjoy when I hear classical music done in that way. And dressed down, just very informal, just the popular stuff, basically, that we all know. um, and someone said to me that it's sort of uh, lowering the standard of classical music, but I don't think so. I think in a way it's connecting with people who not necessarily would go to a concert, but that they hear the music and that they start getting appreciation for the music in a very informal way, which then could attract them to concert halls, or could attract them to venues where there are concerts and so on. But for me personally, I'm also not a competitive person, and for me, something like that, even if it's not perfect, it's wonderful to see. It's wonderful to hear, and it also it goes with the whole atmosphere of being outside, and the people around, and the movement, and so on. So yeah, no, I totally agree with you there. Yeah.
I think it could be even a big, big plus for the musicians and
Mm.
maybe also the people around it, because the musicians can still play perfect in a concert hall if they want or wherever they want.
Yeah, yeah,
But to have those two worlds of one's letting completely go and just
exactly. Mm.
relaxing, it's a good balance to me. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's true. Yeah, I think for the musicians as well, just that, not that pressure, not to have that pressure, is a good thing. But tell me, how did you start playing the violin?
Uh, I actually grew up with it.
Mm,
In my home, I have three siblings, so we are four kids. And I remember always growing up having classical music somewhere. My
mm,
family is not a professional music family, but for example, my Italian grandparents would always listen to classical music. They just loved it. And that came through to my parents. And for my parents, it was really important that all of us four kids grow up with a lot of different activities,
mm,
sports, different kind of sports, not just one sport. Music, every one of us grew up with at least an instrument, going to a state's music school to just have also the musical side of it, doing a lot of creative things with my mom, lots of different things,
mm.
and especially giving us the freedom to choose. um, my parents both played the violin in their school, high school back then, but only as a hobby.
Yeah.
And I don't remember the moment, but my mom said she had to bring a violin, like a full-size violin, to the Luthier, to the Geigenbauer in at the
Mm,
Musikverein Ramsay Gorbach, and she was taking me with her, and I was still very young, I think 4 or so, and it happened already several times that I begged her to play the violin, but it was always too big for me. And at that point, I was making a huge tantrum, a huge drama, because I really thought that violin was for me, even though it was a full
Oh.
size violin. And I think at that point, she just decided to give it a try. And I
Mm.
grew up with violin, but funnily, for most of the early years, I wasn't very crazy about it.
Oh, I
I
see.
was always
Mm,
doing it as a hobby, but all of us siblings have really funny stories of where we
Mm,
tried to get out of practicing. And
mm,
I uh, I don't know. I try to tune the violin really crazily so that when I go to the lesson, and at my young age my teacher would tune it, she would take longer to tune it and take a few minutes away of the lesson. Um, um, or for example, when we would get in the car, especially with my mom, there would be always the classical music radio channel on. And
Yeah.
I, at the time, really didn't like classical music.
Mm.
So I always tried to jump in the car first to switch the channel really quick. So it really didn't have my attention at a young age.
Yeah.
I never had a break of it, but I was really focused on sports. I was a very active kid. And I was in a general school, but
Mm,
after a few years, I didn't like it at that school anymore. And it really overwhelmed me in a way. And one week, I think the last week of the summer holidays, I quickly told my mom, I really can't do this anymore and I need to switch school, which was very stressful because there was no time to visit schools anymore. And shortly before, my sister was thinking about switching to the Musikgymnasium in Wien, the music high
mm,
school. So they saw it, and I was like, okay, I'll go. I just want to go
yeah.
to any other school, but
Mm,
I just want to switch. And I ended up in the Musikgymnasium Wien, and I totally loved it. Right
really.
away, all the music projects, being surrounded by kids that are interested in art and music and are also therefore much more authentic, in my opinion, than at
Mm,
least the kids in my old school. I felt very welcome. I
mm,
I really loved this world, and that's when I started to really bring the attention to the violin. So that
mm,
was around 16, I think. So I did have a late start, and I did put a lot of pressure on myself, saying like, oh, I didn't have all that experience of hard practicing of the years before and everything. And I worked really hard, but I was motivated and it was my decision. So that's basically
but
where
that's
I am.
wonderful. Yeah. But this is actually, this just proves what I'm trying to well, it's actually an idea that I have, or the conclusion that I came to, that uh, art should be taught in schools, in all schools, not just. And now you're saying that the children in or the pupils in the school that had the same sort of idea about art and the same um, way of expressing themselves through art, and that brings a totally different atmosphere in the school as well, and amongst these pupils. And I'm thinking that we should change the school system so that all children could do art. They don't have to be not on that level, but at least get exposed to art and get the opportunity to from a young age in a school. Can you imagine in a normal school, if all children play an instrument, or get the opportunity, not, well, if they don't play an instrument, at least dance, but in some form of art, um, that their thinking would be different, their whole approach to art and to each other will also be different.
I really believe in that. In my old school, being surrounded were kids, maybe one of the kids in the class grew up with an instrument, but quit quite soon after, or something like that. I was, at least in my class, one of the only kids who really played the instrument, and it did give me a hard time. It was not very welcome among the students. It was classical music, it was a classical music instrument, and it was not something cool, and it really did give me a hard time. It made me sometimes feel like a little outsider when I would have to talk about it, or I even had I my music teacher in that old school, he tried really hard. He's really a very nice person, and he had the idea of making me play in front of the class, and it really did go in the wrong direction. It was totally not welcome, and it's hard. You don't feel
Yeah.
welcome, and even at that time, I was not doing it fully thinking this is going to be my profession or something like that.
Mm.
But it was music. It was something I was doing, and there's nothing wrong with it. But
Mm.
I'm I really would love to have schools more supporting
Yeah.
more arts and music, definitely.
Yeah, I think so. And if you think there are many, you grew up in Vienna, and of course you grew up with the theaters here and all the cultural things happening, and of course there's so many possibilities to go to concerts and the opera and so on. But there are many children also in small towns in, say, America, or in I mean, if I just hear in Scotland, for example. There are towns where it's so far away from the big cities that some of those children never get into a theater. And that, the Scottish Ballet, they do these projects that they go out to schools there and do that. But I'm thinking that's not enough. That's not enough if it's the ideas are very good, but I think then already that appreciation should have already been established in these schools, amongst these children. Then when the artists come in and they do additional programs, then it would be so much more fruitful, and it would be so much more appreciated by children. And like you say, not everybody will become a musician after that, but at least they will have the exposure to art and the appreciation for it. Yeah.
Definitely, definitely, and it
Mm.
it is a really really big and important influence, especially at a young age. But
Mm.
even for adults, I mean, it it keeps your imagination, your brain active, your emotional side. In my opinion, I did think about that a lot the last years, but in my opinion, musicians, artists, everyone who is in contact with such an art form, um, they're often being seen crazy or different or very
Yeah.
special in a way. But in my opinion, it is because through the art, they're being forced to open up, to explore their deep, deep sides, their emotional sides, and all of this. So they're not typical people working in an office and having a huge wall, not
Mm.
being in contact with anything that's on a deeper level, of their, even a traumatic side of theirs that maybe would be good to work up and
Exactly. Yeah.
get in contact with it. And I think that's only a big plus for artists. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the science has been done, the experiments have been done, and it's actually proof that artists' brains are different, or react different. And if we talk about feeding children healthy food, then at least we have to also talk about the mental aspect and the soul food, not just the physical, for the physical body. But Sophie, tell me, was there something interesting you did? You recovered from a very serious injury, I know, but in this time, was there something that you've done that you've never done before? Something that you just did for yourself?
Um, I think several things. One of the things was definitely that I found out for myself that I do have a green thumb and am not the plant killer that I thought
Oh,
I was.
okay.
I mean, those are just little things.
Yeah, yeah.
I obviously I spend a lot of time at home as
Mm.
everyone else, but since I also couldn't play the violin, or not as much as I would normally, I did have to find different activities or different things for my mind.
Yeah, yeah.
I was taking up part a lot at a new upcoming project.
Yeah.
I don't really know well how to explain it, but it's called mindful music making,
Mm.
and I absolutely love it. It has been founded by Alina Pogoskina, who is a violinist herself, and it's a I think it's already now the 5 or 6 years since it exists, and I started joining before my injury,
Mm.
and I absolutely loved it. It was a retreat back then, and then throughout the time when Corona and the lockdown came, they started to switch to online now and then. Um, and I it helped me a lot also to continue growing throughout this rehab.
Mm.
And what do I do with music? Who am I as a
Yeah.
musician or a normal human being? All of these things. So I actually spend a lot of time with myself,
Mm.
my health, my mental health, my future, my past, my present, all of these
Mm.
little things.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful. Yeah. Yeah, that's so great that you had the time, and I think with many people, it's like there's using the time for that and delving, like you say, delving into yourself and figuring out things. Yeah, I think this is something that would be remembered from this time, and that we would always think about, that it was sort of I think it's for many a turning point, in the sense that they rediscover something about themselves, that in the rush they didn't. Yeah.
And besides this time being very hard and yeah, not only positive, I actually also see a big plus um, for I couldn't pick out any person um, who wouldn't get anything positive throughout that time, because
Mm.
I mean, we are being locked um, down at
Yeah.
home, but that forces us to spend time with us. I mean,
Mm.
the life before, we would completely keep us busy with different things, but never give ourselves a break and actually listening inside
Mm.
us, and seeing who am I, what do I like, what do I really like, what do I actually want to do. There's so many people who are in a profession, even musicians sometimes, that actually figure out throughout that time, maybe not,
Mm.
like the instrument will always be a hobby, but and like a very dear thing of yours, but it's not going to be the huge career or something like that, and there's
Yeah.
nothing bad about that. And I see a big plus coming out of that time,
Mm.
besides that it has also some negative sides, of course.
Yeah, no, no, definitely. I totally agree with you. And I also think the fact that you are young and this is happening, this is such a great thing, for young artists as well, because I think I predict that from the young artists, from the young musicians, they will come a new movement, a new way of making music, and I really believe that. I think you are on sort of the bottom of the journey, or the start of the journey, and I think you will have new insights. And I think we will, in a few years' time, look back and see. It's like in the past, in history, you can see directions artists went into and change that came, and I think this will come from the young artists. Yeah.
Yes, it's a hard time, especially when you're in this gap between education and actually having a full-time job, like a
Exactly. Yeah.
very secure income. I do totally feel that among all my friends. But at the same time, I really love to see how they start exploring, because in classical music, it is such a structured world, and
Mm.
you're being brought up in it only thinking, or mostly only thinking in one pattern, one way.
Exactly.
And you don't, unfortunately, until now, I don't find that the music education in classical music is very free and very much focused on, okay, who is this musician and what is
Mm.
his benefit, what is his gift of making music, trying to support the individual's art. And I think, I hope that during this time, for most of the young musicians especially, that they can find their own music, their own way of expressing. And yeah, I
Mm.
really hope that this helps them.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there that and it's also the, I mean, I think it is important to have the structure for, to have that as a basis. But I do think that even though it's we talk about lockdown, it's actually given um, artists more freedom in a way, because now it's just you and it's just what you do and how you do it. And I think that pressure from all other things, are they not there? So I do think you know this is a time of really you know freedom to explore and to try different things and see like you say, who is the artist
My
inside you. Yeah.
yeah, my
Mm.
time with my rehab was, I think for me it was the perfect example of that, because I think I needed the injury and the rehab to get this little push of help to find
Mm.
that. But in the end, what this rehab gave me, especially the rehab on the violin, was that it took away the time pressure, because I was always thinking, oh, I'm already quite late, I need to push
Yeah,
harder, I
yeah.
need to work harder. It took away the pressure of there's anything coming up,
Mm.
because I knew I'm injured, I can't do anything right now. That's okay. I don't have to put pressure on
Mm.
myself. And the most important thing was that I got to explore myself completely from zero on a new level while practicing and while making music. I I started to listen to myself. I started to feeling inside me and seeing what happens in the process of playing.
Yeah.
Um, for me, it was combined with a little bit of the mental health, and it really, I think I wouldn't have gotten to that if I wouldn't have gone through that time.
Mm.
It made me really aware of my own abilities, my what space I need when practicing, all these little factors which usually, at least I didn't consider before that.
Mm. I think
It
it's
it also changed my sound. I hear that from
really,
yeah,
wow. Mm.
it's definitely, I didn't have any person who didn't tell me that, who knew me before. um I mean, the years before were really hard for me, and now people have heard me afterwards and they just say, in comparison, I have
Mm.
a much more open sound, a much more, it's as if it swings again. It comes
Mm.
out in waves, and before that it was very tight, and it
Right.
was a
Mm.
perfect mirror and picture of me where I
Mm.
was. Yeah.
But this is so interesting because I think this sometimes this insecurity of thinking, well, I'm behind because I started late, or I don't do this like anybody else does, so there must be something wrong with me. But in the meantime, I think you are the one standing out and being leading or being different. The fact that you are different than everybody else is a positive, you know, that, as I say, your Instagram page, you know, immediately caught my eye, and I found it interesting to see. I didn't, you know, it wasn't just another Instagram page, or even though it was about the injury, but you really captured my attention. And I think, you know, maybe you thought of your Instagram in a different way, but you've now made us, you know, or you're telling a very interesting story. And I think this is important, that I think maybe sometimes these things in life happen. Okay, but with you, it happened during lockdown. So it was like a double, almost like a double thing that happened. But I do think it's this, like you now say, that you realize something about yourself, that you're not in a situation where you, amongst other people, where you keep comparing yourself. So now you're alone, and you don't have to compare yourself. You just have to discover yourself and see who you are and who the artist is. And I think it's important that I see that with my children in the ballet world as well. I think there's a difference between comparing and measuring. You know, comparing yourself to others is really not a good thing, because you will never be like anybody else. Measuring yourself can be the, you know, on what level am I? Am I already there or there? But that's measuring, you know, that's not comparing. So I think maybe you've done that now, you know, measuring where you are with the violin and where you are with your injury and how far you are going and how far you've come.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Um, I I think mainly the big help for that is that I keep reminding myself that anyways, even now, I can't apply for things. I think a month ago, I had my second surgery. So, and it's going much better after having the material out of my hand and everything. I do feel a huge difference, but it still needs time to rebuild my muscles, rebuild my endurance to play, and all of these little factors. So I really don't have, or I'm not worrying about taking out that pressure, because if I would start putting pressure on it, I would start getting cramps in my arm, starting maybe from the neck, from putting pressure on myself. That would run down my arm, and that would run down to my wrist, and I would maybe then end up in a different
yeah, it's just, yeah,
struggle.
yeah,
Yeah. But also with social media, for me, it's important that people hopefully can read through that it's really authentic. I do get a really positive feedback from you through having said that, because I do take a lot of time to really be sure what I write, not because I want to censor it, but because it's so authentic and so
yeah,
open that it feels very fragile to me.
mm,
Even though it might be a post with something very simple writing, for me that's very exposed.
yeah.
Um, but it really brings me joy to share that with the people around me.
I
Yeah.
think that's you know, for artists, I think when you perform and the audience is there, you can see there's so many people who've come to watch me, and this is their reaction. Where on social media, it's really it's blind, you know. It's like, who's seeing my post, who, you know, it's not always, people don't always like it, but some people uh, you know, have seen it. And I think that's way, I think likes on a post is very relative, because if you have a big audience, who are the people who gives you the likes? You know, it's more important, like you say, have a smaller audience on your Instagram page, but then, you know, these are people who are interested in what you do and interested in what you say, and that's more important. So I think in that way, this is why I'm saying social media has the different sides. And yeah, I'm not the one that, I also don't believe that it has to be how many million people, because I just think, what is the point of that? I would
Yeah.
rather have three people really interested
Yeah.
in my picture than yeah. But Sophie, tell me, what is your wish for when this is all over, and what is your wish for when your arm and your hand and everything is now um, healed?
All of this meant with Corona or anything specific in general?
Whatever, just a wish. What have you been wishing so far for the future?
Well, the past months it was my hands getting healthy and
Yeah.
back to normal. Right now, I do get a really good feedback from my body. So I do trust a lot that this wish is already in the process of getting through,
Mm.
like getting really
Yeah,
true.
yeah, yeah.
Um, I have been working a lot and trying to find my future and trying to think what to do. I did figure out that I cannot live without music and art, which is a very big relief for me.
Mm.
I think my wish would be to just getting further in that process. I do have a slight idea already of what I think my gut feeling wants to do in the future, and it has something to do with musicians, their mental health, and
Mm.
strengthening the art and the authentic side of musicians. And I think my biggest wish right now is to find more clarity in this
Yeah.
whole process. Continuing finding back the connection to the violin and the music,
Mm.
and working through old experience. And I think those are all the factors that lead together to my path in the future. Yeah.
Mm.
I
Wonderful. But I do hope, because you're touching a very interesting subject, and that's the mental health. And I think many musicians do not talk about that enough. And like you say, it's a very important subject, because I think artists and musicians just think they have to cope and and go on with it, but the pressures are really there. And yeah, maybe these times now, we can highlight these things, and maybe through these talks, people hear, and people can understand that it's not just them being affected, but everybody, a lot of people are affected by that. Mm.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's one thing is the mental health of the musician himself that might have come from himself, but different big factors is also how the music world or the artwork also for dancers
Yeah,
definitely
exactly.
looks
Yeah.
like, just how they are being treated,
Mm.
how their surrounding is
Mm.
very often, and I hear this way too many times, it's not a very healthy and safe environment. um,
Mm.
I definitely did have my experiences too in that, and that also is a huge factor for mental health.
Mm.
And the reason why I really hope that now more musicians and artists find the strength to talk about it, is because the mental health has a huge effect on your playing and on your expression. It's important as an experience because it allows you to bring more stories into your music. That definitely, but obviously it's not something very healthy, and to work through that and also try to change that, I think it could change the way of how music is being brought out too.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think also you are right that without the artist knowing, it does affect how they do the art or present the art, because of course the mental and the physical is so closely connected.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. But Sophie, it was so lovely to talk to you, and thank you so much for sharing all this about your injury also. And I hope I see you when you're in Vienna next time, because I missed you to take your picture. The weather was just so bad, but maybe now in the summer if there will be time.
Yeah, thank you so much. I
Yeah.
really love the work you do. I don't know yet when I'm gonna be able to come to Vienna because of
Oh,
the
okay.
regulations when
Oh,
crossing the
yes,
border.
yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, last time I did have the medical exemption. I hope it won't be that reason the next time,
Oh,
but
yeah, 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 yeah. Okay.
but yes, definitely when I get to
Okay.
Vienna, I will
Okay.
thank
That would
you.
be great. Okay, and have a lovely afternoon.
Yes, you too. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sophie.
Bye
Bye.
bye.